Welcome back to Foiling Week 2021. I'm your host, Chris Museler. We have again with us Bruno Gintoli, who we are pre-recording this episode, and we will be live during Foiling Week, July 1st through 4th. And one thing that I'd like to mention here at Foiling Week is that we have three pillars: safety, sustainability, and accessibility. And they're all really important to the community. It's a wonderful opportunity that in sport and in business and in our personal lives, we get to combine all of our interests in one event. And for all of us, these three things are really important. Today, we're talking about sustainability, and we have three awesome guests who really spend a large part of their lives talking about this and using their knowledge to influence other people to kind of promote best practices and kind of positively influence the way we all live and work and play. So without further ado, we have Svein Rasmussen from Starboard. Kelly Covington, what would you say, you wear many hats, but what would you say the primary agency that you work for?
Well, I am an independent consultant, but I think probably the work I'm doing with the Ocean Race at the moment on sustainable boat building is probably the most relevant for today.
Awesome. And then we have Kel Van Cise, who I guess I will label Kel as the technical editor for Foiling Magazine, the only foiling magazine in the world right now that I know of. Kel is quite practiced in sustainability, and he uses his platform as an editor to influence people along the lines of sustainability. So welcome, Kel.
Thanks. I'm going to put a small asterisk on that. Rich is actually our technical editor. I'm the contributing editor for formalities, but it's all similar.
Awesome. Well, that gives you a broader position, so we'll take that. So let's start. Let's see, where did we want to start with this? One thing that we talk about a lot in not just board sports, but in sailing sports and in the boating industry is some people say in performance, we really have this drive, especially in foiling, that performance is like, don't worry about anything, the cost, be damned. We're going to make things as high performance as possible and as fast as possible. And that's what foiling kind of drives us to do. But along those lines, we have this dirty little secret that the materials that we use, like carbon fiber and mylar and laminates and all these other things, are kind of toxic. So I just want to start right now saying, what are the challenges that we have in the hydrofoil world when our products and the things that we use are really, they're hard to make. They use a lot of materials, and sometimes we have a lot of waste. So maybe we'll start with Svein on the manufacturing side of things. What are some of the biggest challenges we have, not just in the foiling community, but in the sport community, in the sport world, in terms of manufacturing and products?
I guess, thank you.
It's a hard way to start, but
it's good. I mean, you are kind of the bright light, because we live in this, what we like to call a vacuum of ignorance. We just don't know. What is the carbon footprint of something, and it's not talked about in our industry very much, and few of us know any of it at all. So I guess the starting point is the discussion, see what goes into producing these boards, and on the other side, what is the end of life solution. So I think these are the two major things: what does it take to make them, and what to do with them when they're not any good use for us any longer. And from there, we need to zoom in and activate every part of these organizations. We need to, of course, find out what are the footprints and what alternative materials can be used. How can one synchronize with the different suppliers to also change the energy processes that they have. We are working a bit on that, but it is so much unknown territories, and so little work has been done in the whole boating industry, the whole yachting industry, the whole marine industry. Really could maybe get a little push from the foiling industry, because foiling is cutting edge. So maybe we can bring that edge to activate the whole marine industry. So that'll be a little starting point from our side.
Right, and actually you bring up an excellent point. The way foiling has developed is they're kind of late to the game in a way. So with windsurfing and with the boating industry in the 60s when they started making fiberglass boats, and same thing with windsurfing, they came at a time where, you know, they didn't consider end of life cycle and they didn't consider where this stuff goes at the end, and they didn't consider the waste that's involved in making these things. Hydrofoiling is coming at a time where we almost know better at this point. And along those lines, Kelly, so now that we're a little bit more, sorry to use that term, but woke about some of these challenges, you work with events, you work with manufacturers, you know, as a consultant. When people like Svein say, you know, we need to do something about this and we're starting to work on these things, what's your first, you know, piece of advice to companies and events? You know, we can't just talk about the manufacturing of hydrofoils and boards and sails and wings. We have to talk about the events, you know, like that, like the America's Cup, like the Ocean Race, like the Professional Windsurfing Association. What's your first piece of advice when people say, hey, Kelly, we're just trying to do the best we can run an event with all these boats and people. What's your first piece of advice about sustainability?
Gosh, the very first piece of advice I'd have, get your stakeholders together and have a big chat with them. Find out what's important to them. As you mentioned, everyone's woke nowadays. You know, it's there's been a big shift, and people want to see this. So it's hugely important. I mean, you mentioned, you know, performance and how, you know, before now we haven't had to innovate with any constraints. And nowadays, you know, we all have to recognize that there are constraints. There are planetary boundaries that we can't overshoot. So we have this sort of new set of rules, but people are aware of that, and we can keep innovating within those constraints. So we don't want to you know, feel like we're delivering a worse product because of it. We're just delivering a different product. So I guess a piece of advice would be for people to be excited by it, be innovative, and don't look at this as a major constraint, but see what you can do with it differently, I suppose.
Awesome. And we're talking about kind of, you know, we're at the very beginning of the conversation. So we're talking about some broad things, saying we need to do something about, you know, the waste, our carbon footprint, how we live and run events. So we'll go on with that with Kel next. And after that, we'll talk about specifics from each one of our guests, including Bruno, to talk about the Sumoth Challenge, to say, let's just have some little takeaways for our audience to say what little things that we can do as individuals, what they're doing, you know, what you are each doing in your spaces to make a difference in sustainability, some ideas, and we can close out on that. So Kel, on the big picture side of things, you know, you're an editor at large for, you know, basically for a magazine that covers a huge range in a very fast growing industry. How does the magazine think about their influence, and how does sustainability, or how will sustainability influence the messaging that you give out of the magazine?
Yeah, you know, I think sustainability is, especially from my perspective, is it's inherently sort of baked in to everything, to every decision, to every thought. I think of sustainability sort of not as an add-on or as something that would be nice, but rather as a lens through which to perceive everything and to shape other things. And what I've, you know, kind of come to realize, I think, to Kelly's point that she was just making of, you know, the first thing you should do is get together with your stakeholders. I would argue even more broadly than that, you know, get to know who the user base is the critical start. And, you know, from our perspective as a magazine, and especially my perspective as personally as a writer and as a user, people are definitely the greatest asset. 100%. I mean, that's what we are. We're driven by people on the front end, on the back end, in the middle. And so, you know, in the context of sustainability, speaking to design and to brands, of course, minimizing waste and promoting efficiency, all in the context of building, you know, the best product for, you know, that particular user possible. Of course, that's, you know, anything that, you know, fits within those lines, then, you know, we're there to push that, and we're there to help, you know, promote that when that's possible. That's a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, because we're not creating but we can certainly help drive the demand for that. And especially through, our ability to do reviews and to, broadly present products to the market. I think also, we have a tremendous platform for promoting education, on all sides, right? To education through communication of connecting, like what just came out in our new issue 8 yesterday with Spain. There's a piece on Spain. Having that story, his information, everything that he has to bring to the world, having that come out in a platform where tens of thousands of people can see that. And of course, promoting the idea that, we're a community that should share and reuse and I think this is something we'll probably touch on at some point once we dive more into gear specifically, but there are a lot of different facets that we can touch on as a magazine. So yeah, but sustainability is always baked in from the start.
Cool. Well, what we'll do is I want to back up just a second. I'm going to put the spotlight squarely on Kelly just for a moment. And for the sake of our discussion, I should have started with this. Let's define our sustainability lens, and just give me just like the nutshell elevator pitch, give me a rough definition of sustainability for us all right now. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, the UN definition of sustainable development is the intrinsic balance between social, economic, and environmental impacts in a way that caters for the needs of everybody today without harming the needs of those in the future. So cool. That would be the UN definition, which is fairly fairly robust. Having said that, I mean, when we work, I work with organizations, one of the very first questions is, what does sustainability mean to you? What does it mean to your stakeholders? And it does change for different people, and so, people will be focusing on innovation, or other people will be focusing on connecting to nature, people will be focusing on education. And so, it really is worth taking that time to define that for yourself as well. I don't know if anyone here has maybe a different way of defining sustainability for them.
Yeah, Svein, I have a picture in my head of, trees and dirt, with you. And so in your mind, someone who's been in industry for a long time as a manufacturer, as a designer, in sport, what does sustainability mean to you?
Yeah. So let me lean forward and be honest on this. First of all, I didn't realize really what was going on until maybe 6-7 years ago. So before that, I was as ignorant as many are. And however, what I learned is that when we talk sustainability, Kelly put a very good frame on it, the meaning behind it. For many, however, the word is misused in many ways. So when within our little company, we are talking about more environmental work more than sustainability, because it is more clear for us. But I think the whole theme that we can look at again in our industry is that us who then are producing and those who are traveling, to get to the water, we all are polluters. So we can sing the song that we love the outdoors, but we are polluters. So the point is to see, number one, obviously, how can we find this kind of sustainable, but as an environmental way to not only know the emissions and the issues that they're causing to the environment, but also see, can we come up with smart ways to balance that, and can we share smart ways to make even for a positive impact? So that's kind of in our little kind of, let's call it the tiki starboard sphere. Sustainability is more the environment protection and actually making a positive balance. So for us, it's about looking back in time, how can we make up for the sins of our last 27 years of building stuff like what you can see in the back here. It's not great, but we can balance it and even make it positive. So I think that's how we look at the environmental support, more than just having like a sustainability, because when I hear about sustainability, it is more like you are just trying to somehow reduce the emissions all the time. And I want to see more like there is something good for the environment, the fact that we go into it. We shouldn't only experience it, we should also give it something better. So it's better there when we came to it. So that's my little kind of bubble. And yeah.
But I love that vision. It's kind of, you kind of flip the script on the whole thing, because it seems like an impossible hill to climb. And talking about that impossible hill to climb, but looking at it from a positive angle, let's move on to some best practices, some of the things that Kelly recommends, some things in manufacturing, and let's start with talking to Bruno from this pinnacle, like, you know, pie in the sky idea of making a sustainable product, a sustainable moth. So Bruno, give us like a little summary of, you know, imagine if every product that we made in the foiling space took the angle of the Sue Moth Challenge. So just give us the brief on the Sue Moth Challenge and the product that they created that we're going to see during Foiling Week this year.
So thanks. So, well, to put the kind of the showcasing on the Sue Moth, the whole idea is to prove that we can achieve basically high efficient vessels like a moth with sustainable materials, which is something that usually when you want to build something fast and light, you go with carbon, like it's a no-brainer. That's what we all do. I work in composites, and I fight with myself on trying to make the least trash, like when we work. That's what I do every day. So the whole idea of the Sue Moth Challenge and what I actually apply on my day-to-day is to how can I make things better. I know we won't stop doing them. It's something that we will keep building boards and boats and everything. That's how we live. But I'm sure we can make it better, maybe positive at one point, like Sven was saying, on bringing it, like flipping it around. But I think it's possible. We might be reducing the efficiency, the speed of, like, we might be a little bit heavier, and but I think it's totally doable. It's a long way. The way we thought it, and Kelly's also part of it, and Foiling Week as a whole, we think we need to start from the beginning, because if we don't start from the students or from the children, we won't make it. Like Svein was saying, he only started 7 years ago. What if he had started when Starboard started in the 90s? We would be in a much better place now. They're one of the biggest producers of boards, and they're great. But once I have an old Starboard board that I repaired many times, even though I could have, I bought it broken, I repaired it, and so we can do it. But it's many times easier to just buy the new one, and that's it. Keep moving on. So it's just a change of mindset that starts from the beginning. We're really happy the Sue Moth Challenge students, they are with that mindset already. They are not trying to break the rules. They're trying to go with it and even going better. Like the rules are quite rough on what they can do. We allow some carbon fibers for the foils because we know, like I know for a fact that making foils with the flax fibers or other kind of fibers is really tough to make something that works. So we are allowing some of it, but the holes are fully with not renewable, like bio-based materials. So either bio-based or recyclable, easily recyclable. I don't know if I answered to your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You kind of gave us the basics of it, but also just from a philosophical point of view, what their approach is. Yeah. So that's perfect. And so now getting into the specifics, you know, right now, like we're all talking about, this view of sustainability could be used, you know, in an inappropriate way, the term, but really some terms that I know of that have come out of this conversation, especially with our sponsor, 11th Hour, 11th Hour Racing, you know, the practices that they're promoting, and Kelly's worked with them, are pretty groundbreaking. So Kelly, can you tell us a little bit, one of the things that we talk about in manufacturing is life cycle assessment, and Sven just kind of alluded to that a little bit. I'll move from Kelly and then to Kel next to talk about those things, because we can, that's part of our influence, just being aware of a way to look at the stuff that we use. So Kelly, talk to us, what is life cycle assessment and how is that promoted?
Yeah, so life cycle assessment is really growing in our industry, which is fantastic. And
Cool.
it's a way of calculating the environmental impacts of a product over its whole life cycle. So it breaks into three cycles. You've got your manufacturing stage, you've got your use phase, and then you've got your end of life phase. And depending on the product, its main impacts can be in different areas. The type of sport we do, our impacts are really in the manufacturing stage, and we have some major issues in the end of life phase. The actual use phase is very low for us because we don't have a lot of, we're not burning a lot of fuels on the things we're doing. And actually our use phase, I loved what Sven said earlier about the positive side of sustainability, because the great thing about being in a sport is we do have this huge positive impact of what we do as well. We promote healthy lifestyles, we promote connections to the ocean as well. So I definitely agree with that. So yeah, life cycle assessment, it's quite difficult. It's a lot of data collection. The industry is at the beginning stages of that as well. So the data isn't always readily available. There's a tool that's been funded by 11th Hour Racing that's been developed called Marine Shift 360, which has been working with a lot of the offshore sailing and the marine industry to start gathering this data. But definitely, I recently did a survey, and gathering the data was given as the #1 hardest thing about doing LCA. So, you really have to go back to the source and try and find this data. But it does allow you to see where the impacts are, and not just in CO2 emissions as well. I mean, CO2 emissions gets a lot of the gets a lot of the press, but it gives you a holistic view of environmental impacts. So it will also look at water consumption, it will look at eutrophication, the waste energy, the waste percentage of what you're doing, which actually is quite useful from a financial point of view, because it often helps companies realize that they've got this high waste stream, which is another issue in composites. Right. So yeah, it tries to give you this sort of holistic viewpoint, so that we can target our energy in where the real impacts are as well.
You have a great point in terms of the hardest thing in these life cycle assessments, even just to figure out where you're being wasteful and where you can make improvements, is just gathering the data. So taking that as a given from the industrial point of view, is it hard to get buy-in from companies once you present this, the possibilities of once you have this information and then figuring out what to do with the information? But is it hard to get buy-in to even attempt the life cycle assessment? Or are people all in, like, I'm ready to do it, just we have to try?
I actually think nowadays there's a lot of interest in it. People,
cool.
Well, certainly in the area I work in, this is also happening in the superyachting industry as well. There's a group working on it with them, and I think that's particularly complex. I mean, think of all the products that go into a super yacht. So, but this idea of measurement is really coming through, and I think that's with a shift in people's understanding of sustainability and the need for it to be fact-based. People want to know that their decision making is right. They want to prove that what they're doing is the right decision. And sometimes things are surprising as well. We do need this science because things that maybe naturally seem like a better decision aren't always necessarily when you look over a whole life cycle as well. So yeah. So for getting people's buy-in, I think there's certainly a lot of commitment on this. There's a lot of people in the industry doing life cycle, and that's fantastic, because the more data we build, the easier hopefully it will get for us.
Awesome. And you bring up a really important point, and I'm going to move to Kel with this one, is we're recognizing more and more that Foiling Week brings a lot of people together. So we're like a little focal point where we can share our messaging and influence the influencers. But someone like Svein is, that's a large company. He said it's a small company, but in our industry, in the board sports industry, it's a big company. You mentioned the super yacht industry. Imagine, we can talk to all the people that are involved in the super yacht industry. We can have our own little forum about it. And imagine if everyone committed to X, whether it be a life cycle assessment and doing something with the information about that. Moving down to Kel, you're a journalist like I am, and you're a board sports writer. Let's see, where is it? So like on the end of life cycle, you have the platform where you can just meditate on an idea, right? So I want to challenge you. I was meditating on the marine industry with the landfills filling up. People are starting to talk about this more, which is good, of all the fiberglass boats. Beneteau, other awesome companies produce new boats every year. They're much bigger than windsurfers. and people either repair them or they get chopped up after a couple of years. I had an idea that if there's a way we can organize taking those hulls, burying half of them in the ground and making sustainable housing out of them, like you live in a boat that's buried up to its waterline. So Kel, I challenge you to, meditate on these ideas in the magazine, and you have a platform to do it. Can you go that far in a magazine, even though people just want to talk about the latest foils?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great question, and that definitely taps into sort of my optimistic, high in the sky kind of, maybe not so high in the sky, hopefully. I guess that's kind of what we're here to prove, right? Ideas, it's like here's the cool thing about the magazine is Kai and Alex, who, Kai's our chief editor and Alex runs Waterborne Media. So we also, the Kite Mag is also our sister magazine. Mm-hmm. They've been very graciously open to sort of, allowing Foiling Magazine to be this very interpretive space and this interpretive platform. And, I come into it with a design background. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, I don't think we're going to be turning used foils into housing. We could convert some tail wings into sushi knives or something, but I have the scars to prove it. But I think, again, like I kind of come back to the people element of it, to sort of touch on something that I want to go into. I really, so this is kind of in the works right now. So sorry if it sounds vague, but yeah. Using the platform and the incredible wealth of resources that we have in the when I say in the foiling industry, it's primarily surf foilers. So we have wingers. So for wing foiling, surf foiling of different formats, and of course e-foiling, who are sort of primarily our core reader base. Mm-hmm. There's tremendous opportunity and data in that to explore how people use the products. And I think that this is something that kind of touches into what like a manufacturer specifically might be wanting to do for market research. But we have sort of this unique perspective where we're sort of an island that's semi-independent, and I like to think of myself as particularly independent within that, to do that research. And so I mean that's a huge aspect that I think we have the opportunity and the responsibility to pursue, that I'm setting up the structure to do that going forward. So I don't know if that really answers your question specifically, but that's yes, the answer to all the sustainability questions is yes. But that's one major method by which we're trying to go there. For sure.
And understanding the end user is a big part of that. And also, we said just before, hydrofoiling sports, or even like Kelly knows, hydrofoiling in industry is really new, and we hope that the end users are telling us like how they, what kind of products they want to use, and how they use them. So there's a lot to be learned from the user. So let's not forget the human element. And so Sain, I want to, we're going to get towards the end of this conversation, and I'm starting to, I'm not young anymore, but I hang out with a lot of young foilers. And the one thing I realize is younger and younger people, women and men, because we had some really awesome young foilers on a previous session. We have a lot more in the upcoming sessions. They demand certain things. They demand social and environmental justice and proactivity in their lives. Whatever company they work for, they're like, paperless or I'm not working for you, those kind of things. And so I try to embody those things, just like Kel is saying about the end user and thinking about the people. And now it's kind of bothering me. So like, the boards that I ride on, the foils that I use, the wings that I use, I'm trying not to feel guilty, about some of the product. Would I feel better if I had a flax board foil? I mean, a flax board, like a flax and eco resin kite foil board. I think I might, am I willing to have a heavier board to carry down to the beach? I don't know. I might have to get used to that or get stronger. So I guess I want to kind of, lead this discussion towards the end of our, end, even though we just started a conversation on those things. Svein, is there a time where we see, I love your idea of focusing on the positive, because it's almost impossible to get rid of some of the negatives, but to balance, with our environmental impact. But do you see a time where we have, a board that's just like when I have my bamboo toothbrush or, other products, natural products that I know, like I feel really good about having this product. Do you see that a future in that for our products?
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed, they also existed some time ago.
Yeah, cool.
Right? So indeed, but it may be 10 years into the future until we, for instance, would have a board that we could fill with mycelium, natural foam, instead of ending up with. I put that one out. We found this one in the water the other day. It maybe it didn't come from a board, but that's going around out there and it's not pretty. So I could definitely move on. There are hollow boards coming, of course, so we get rid of that too. Bioresins are there, and I think for a lot of different components, bioresins are good, but bioresin, they're still half good, half bad. So again, I think what is important is to say, yes, one will want to try to make as many changes as one can. One will want to use the volcanic rocks, the basalts. You can do that in UD, it starts to get interesting. A lot of fibers. You can have the castor beans, to move around a lot of plastic parts. We are not, the whole recycling song, I'm not too happy about any longer, because it kind of makes us want to draw more of the fossil fuels up there so we can keep the recycle and all that. But what we feel is that, yes, of course, the whole reduction thing needs to happen in all aspects, and then finding ways to make an ecosystem where you as a rider feel that this is a good product to purchase, because if I purchase that product, is more good than bad. And that's the idea. So first we reduce, but then we look at how can we then, with what's left, how can we do something good to actually more than balance what is left. And that's where you have these super simple solutions where we use, when it comes to the CO2 emissions, we are basically just finding ways where we use natural CO2 sequestration. So basically smart trees like mangroves that can bring down a lot of CO2 over their lifetime. So in the end, you can bring down 10 times what they were shooting up. And so that's simple, that's straightforward. And the same with the plastic thing. We keep on picking up all this plastic around our beaches and in the water there. So, I'm not far away from us actually picking up the same amount of plastic as the weight of the product. Yeah. So, this is not a fantastic solution, but if you were somebody,
it's part of the solution though.
If you wanted to purchase a product, you could say, yes, this product may weigh 5 kilos, but at the same time, somebody has been taking that out of the scene in a certain way. So at least you should not feel guilty about buying the product.
Yes.
So it is a solution to that part. So you are stuck in a cycle, making something positive out of it. And another thing I will say is that, again, you saw that EPS here. So then our friends at Firewire, you know, they take all the old EPS and put it into smart things that they can work on.
Yeah, cool.
It's a lot of stuff, but what I wanted to show was something like this. I don't know if you can see it here, and maybe it's upside down, inside out.
Yeah, no, it says something about emissions, CD emissions.
Exactly. So all the 22 products coming up will have tabs showing all the different types of emissions and also the positive impact that this product will have. On the other side is the plastic footprint, all the different types of plastic that goes into the product and what one tries to do with it. So in that way, if you are interested in this product, you can understand the product. And you can make up your mind if it's good or bad, but what it does, it drives us to try to make this piece look better next year. Working with our suppliers to get those solars on the roofs and minimizing what it is. So when you get into this, you know, it's like on the one side, you want to make a foil that is fast, you want to make a board that is lighter. That's one aspect. But another theme, I think, for us who loves this stuff is that if you can make something that actually has a lesser impact, that's really super driving too. But we need to start to put some numbers to it so we know what they're talking about. And so other people know what they're talking about, and then have a race in sustainability. So I think this is the good fun when you can when the industry can start to compete on this and share this with all those people who want to get some gear.
Awesome. And Kel has a question for you, Svein.
Yeah. So I want to know, how did you guys decide what info to put on those tabs?
Yes. So obviously what they're doing, first of all, we look at what are the major parts of a product. So, you know, it is anything from the biggest volume is obviously in a board is obviously the EPS. That's a big volume. And then another very important part is obviously the resin, because that has quite some big emission. And then you look at the different types of fibers. Obviously, a carbon fiber has a higher emission than what a flax fiber or a basalt would have. And then you look at the paint, and you look at the packaging, you look at the transport. But you know, when you look at CO2, it's kind of easy to almost reduce it by half just by installing solar. I mean, what we find is that here, this is a big board. It's a race board in paddleboarding actually. And here we have actually the electricity is here 37.3%. And by solar, I think we can reduce that to maybe just 3 to 5%.
Meaning solar in the factory that it's built.
Say again, please.
Like using solar in the factory that it's built.
Yes, so we will reduce it maybe by, I think using solar you can reduce by maybe up to 90%. Because the solar installation, you know, jamming all that different materials out of the ground also has a certain print. But in the end, that's good. So I think when we're able to get the factories to shift around, we can, by doing only that, I think you can bring down the total footprint by 30% and a little bit more. And you know, we did a little calculation today in our little company. We installed solar maybe 3.5 years ago. And at that time, there was an ROI here in Thailand at about 6.5 years, 6.5 years. Now that return on investment is just above 4 years, as solar prices have been reduced a lot.
Yeah.
So, you know, who knows that when we are calling the factory down the road here that makes many boards, I think they may not quite know yet how amazing that would be for their own finances if they're shifted. So we need to share this information. So everybody are aware of what happens. We were on the phone with our kite and wing producer yesterday, shared with them, and you know, try to get them on board when they can see that it's not only a cool thing to do, it's not only the right thing to do, but when it also makes dollar and cents for them, they jump on it quick. So I think these are the easy solutions. Just communicate on the cutting edge stuff out there, and yeah, pretty straightforward.
And go ahead, Svein.
No, that is, you asked me, Ken asked how we decided what to be in there, and I'm seeing if there was something more. Waste, yeah, so waste is 2.5 kilo CO2, and that's when we would like to get down to almost nothing. You know, that shouldn't be there. There shouldn't be any waste any longer.
That's a little question I have on that side. You're talking about EPS on the block you put there. I haven't bought a board in a long time. I built my own. Sorry for the commercial side of things. But I do them out of EPS from the trash. So I scavenge, like I go and I pick big pieces that I found in the trash everywhere here in the city. It's quite easy to get from TV boxes or whatever it is. Then I chop them, I glue them together, and I build my board. And I can say this now, I'm building a board for Foiling Week out of recycled EPS and basalt that it's going to be there showcasing. So since we're pre-recording, it's all good. But what do you have any, because when you talk about waste, I think you talk about the waste that you do from, like, I don't know, the backing film from your pre-pregs or the whatever it is that you have as a waste, or the resin that it's like over from your laminations. Is there any process you want to put on the fact of, let's say, on the life cycle on the board, when it's over and it's dead, on getting back whatever is there? Like, I know you are pioneers on the way you build boards by molding the EPS so you don't have to machine it, which is awesome. I don't know if you do that on all boards, but I know you have that process on some of them, and that reduces the footprint and the energy involved big time. On the other side, on the end of the board, when the board is dead, do you think about how that could be taken into account, not just for starboard but worldwide?
Yes. So this is, I believe, the most important one, because then we can go back in time. You know, we're not only looking forward, and we can go back in time and see, you know, what was produced 40, 50 years ago by some boat producer and what we made maybe 27 years ago. Super important. And number one, I think it will be quite simple to get some buyback schemes. We actually have this in Norway. If you bring an old board back to the dump, you get 1,000 kroners. That's like that's 100 euro. So systems like these are in place, but what do these yards do with that equipment then? They haven't been educated in what do they do with this thing. Look, they don't even know what's inside of it, right? So here comes the theme. We need to group up and work together with a fair few other organizations to come up with good solutions for these different composite materials. And there are a few people working on it already. Of course, British Marine has been on it for a while. There are some people in the UN that are working on it. And actually next week, I think we have a intern in Switzerland who will focus only on this. So I think maybe out of this conversation, we can share and we can pull together a lot of organizations and people who work on it and set down a commission to end of life in our little industry and in the broader industry, because we need a lot of people and a lot of thinking to come up with simple ideas where we can that we can share with those who would in the end need to do that job. And it could be a lucrative job to do it, you know. So I think that's like super important, Bruno. This we need to really start to do something about.
Yeah, totally agree.
And Kelly has a question, and then we'll start to wrap up with some closing awesome comments.
Yeah, so actually it was thinking about the end of life, Sven, and in how we tackle that challenge. I was just thinking what level of how we can actually think about designing the boards. I'm afraid I don't know enough about board design and things, but there's all the products we've created already, and that's an issue. And there is a lot happening around that. There's fiberglass recycling programs going and making cement and things like. We're trying to figure out how do we deal with what we've already produced. But as we move forward, how can we think about design of these products so actually they're easier to recycle? So, okay, well, hopefully this board's going to have several lives. We're going to make it, it's going to get repaired, it's going to get reused. And actually, Chris, to you, I think the best thing you can probably do is buy secondhand equipment. Okay, like,
oh wow,
that's,
yeah.
that's the lowest impact. So
it's not the
buy
easiest
some secondhand.
with the wings and the foils, it's hard to get nowadays.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
True,
production.
but it will grow. It will grow. But
Yeah,
but just think,
agreed.
how do we, if we say, okay, at the end of this, we've got to recycle this. How can we design better?
Yes, it comes to the resin. The resin binds everything together. So if you can have a resin that is recyclable, there are some companies working on it. I think Entropy has had some recyclamine. I'm not sure if I've pronounced it correctly. There is a lot of work going on to develop resins where you can actually you can take the parts and separate them. So you can take one carbon layer away, maybe from a fiberglass layer, and you could actually use those layers again. So we need to also maybe motivate these companies to start to do it. And we have had certain projects in the past doing this for smaller parts like pins and things. But it'd be really fun to start to move more of that technology into the boards too. And but frankly speaking, all this is happening too slow. The problem is big. We need to speed it up, but we need to motivate those who are the scientists and the companies that have this as their business. They just should get a bit of support from us, so they feel love for the very important work they do.
Awesome. That's a great point. And I want to close this up. And yeah, and that connection, Sven, like everyone has to feel like they're having their say and that they're loved, you know, like we're, like you say, that we're all part of the conversation. I want to end this up. You know, we've talked about some technical solutions. I love going down these paths where you have a consultant talking to a manufacturer, talking to an influencer, talking to an engineer. You know, we have a great group together. We have to remember those sunny, happy days. That's all of Sven's advertisements show us why we're even having this conversation, which is we're playing on the sea, we're inspired by nature, we're driven by nature, you know, powered by nature. I don't know what company has that moniker, but we're all powered by nature. So I want each of us will just go around the group and just say, you know, what inspires you in our sport and what we're working on, and what advice do you give for someone, because we play on the sea. So what advice do you give someone for how to look and act on the sea? Is it just pick up trash when you find it and don't get upset about it, just do it? Or do you have another piece of advice for enjoying the sea? Maybe we'll start with Svein and we'll go around to Kelly and Kel.
All right. Yeah, I believe it fits much into anybody's particular potential. You know, everybody have aspects where they can be influential. Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody can talk to local authorities about what they would like to change in legislation. Mm-hmm. Maybe others could talk to some companies about packaging or what they see floating around. Mm-hmm. Maybe others can go and look at the electricity grid and things like these. You know, I think every one of us must look at what is our core interest. Where do we have the contacts? Where do we know somebody? Where do we have the interest? So, of course, I love to pick up trash, but you know, I'm a different guy. So everybody likes to do that. So yeah, I think it just comes to trigger whatever we feel could be fun for us to do. So very individual decision from what I can understand. Whatever you feel you can make some impact. Right,
and what makes you feel good. How about you, Kelly? Any advice and how we enjoy the sea?
How we enjoy it. I keep on enjoying it.
Yeah. How we enjoy the sea, but do it responsibly, you know, have some kind of influence like Sven is saying.
Definitely. Well, I mean, he covered a lot of it. I think that's it. I mean, we all have an opportunity to make a difference. You know, I think there's a quote like that. That's, you know, we're all a small drop in the ocean, but, you know, together we are the ocean kind of thing. So, you know, we do. And every impact, you know, whether we're next to the sea or living in a city, like all of our actions have got an impact on the ocean as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't have to be next to it to do something about it. But just really keep on getting on the water and feel that connection. You know, there's so much we don't feel connected to nature, and we're all very lucky to have that connection because of the sport that we choose. So encourage other people to get involved as well. You know, bring your friends along, get them on the water. The more we love something, the more we're going to protect it.
Awesome. And Kel, we'll end with you on that thought. You and I have spent some time on the water together. And the nice thing is when we get off the water, we're so energized and happy that these kind of conversations are happy conversations, meaning the conversations we're having, we're not like all doom and gloom. It's all positive, driven towards solutions. So, you know, how do you enjoy the sea, and how do you combine that with these interests that Sven's talking about in terms of your environmental responsibility?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because it's like for all of us, right? Being in the water is a lifestyle. It's something that we've either grown up around, or, you know, it's become like part of our identity. And of course, you know, it's start by recognizing that that's something which is demographically and ethnographically a privilege, for sure. I mean, I consider myself very lucky that I can go in the water 5 to 7 days a week. And so that's, you know, that's a huge privilege. And so I do it as like part of it. I base my day around it. You know, it's like, what's the tide, what's the wind, what's the waves, and how can I fit everything in around that? But I think, you know, what I've pulled from that are 3 things that, you know, are absolutely applicable to whether you are or not in the water every day or every week or every month or at all, which is one, you know, look broadly. I've certainly learned, and I think Svein would agree with this, that buying an eco board is absolutely the tip of the iceberg, if you want to even call it that, right? It's the drop on the tip of the iceberg. So, you know, make your sustainable efforts more broad, especially, you know, the second point, which is get educated. Emphasize your education, and in whatever way, you know, you can seek to be more well-rounded, and to be more aware. And then thirdly, it's I think approach-wise, is aggregation of marginal gains, right? Appreciate the 1% you can do every day, or the 1% you can do every week, and seek accumulation. And I think we so often get bogged down in how daunting a complete reversal or a complete evolution is before we can even get started. So those are the 3 bits that I would say. And if you can be in the water, keep going in the water.
Awesome. What was that like? Last one, seek accumulation.
Yeah, seek accumulation. I suppose, whatever. I don't know if that's the best way I could put that, but
I'm just getting it right, because I think that's awesome. And I think Svein said that, you know, I came in, you know, as a journalist, I came into this hot saying, you know, Svein, you know, we need to just produce net zero boards and all this other stuff. But he turned me around in terms of this balance and how we can promote that. And seeking accumulation. That's my new t-shirt. Seek accumulation.
There you go. That's a good name for a boat, isn't it?
Yeah, an environmentally friendly boat. But I think we'll wrap it up on that. And Kelly knows all so well to make these little steps. Svein is educating us on how to look at those things too. Just, you know, we might be 10 years away from that eco board on the tip of the iceberg, the drop on the tip of the iceberg. But we have to be happy with those baby steps along the way, those little bits of accumulation. I think that's a great message to end on. And I want to thank everyone for joining the sustainability aspect. And I think sustainability kind of filters into a lot of the discussions we have. But Bruno from the Sumo Challenge, Svein from Starboard, Kelly, you know, from the Ocean Race, but also as a consultant, and Kel from Foiling Magazine. Thank you guys so much for being part of Foiling Week 2021. We really appreciate all of the things that you guys do, but thank you for educating us as well. So have an awesome day.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, guys.